this morning.
6:13 this morning. You've probably seen this tiny chapel before on the edge of Boise State's campus on Broadway. It's actually Boise's oldest standing chapel, and it has a very rich history dating back to the 1800s. Here are some of the stories, though, that make this building worth preserving more than 150 years later. In the serenity of their backyard, Barbara and Gary Greenwell glance back over their wedding photos.
That's my dad bringing me down the aisle.
Each photo a memory.
That's how we think we still look.
Yeah. A glimpse back in time.
You don't think you change until you start looking at pictures.
These pictures are a reminder of the beginning of their life together.
November 24th, 1972.
And all the time that's passed since.
45, almost 46 this fall.
Almost 46 years later, Tammy and Dwayne Gamble are starting their life together. Their photos,
that's one of my favorites.
the memories, a little more fresh in mind.
This was everything that we had just wanted.
These two love stories started decades apart. Their beginnings, though, come from the same place. This place is Christ Chapel. Tucked in the trees, nestled on a corner of BSU's campus, the quaint white facade is visible to anyone who drives by, but hidden inside is a rich history dating back to the 1860s.
This is the oldest surviving chapel in the city of Boise. It was built in 1866.
Its foundation can be traced to a group of women who worked hard to fund the chapel.
And they held bake sales and socials. They would have lemonade and cake socials, and they raised $2,400 to build this lovely little chapel.
Back then, it was called St. Michael's Church. Many of the materials still there today, though, were shipped from Europe around Cape Horn.
They would put them on a ship and then go all the way to the far reaches of South America, up the western coast to like San Francisco, Portland, or Seattle, and then put these artifacts on a wagon and bring them to Boise, Idaho to build their first chapel.
Originally, the chapel sat at the corner of 7th and Bannock Streets, but it was eventually moved to 15th and Reidenbaugh and then renamed Christ Chapel. Then it was nearly torn down before being moved here nearly a century after it was built.
They had to close down the city streets to move Christ Chapel here to the BSU campus.
By then, the facade was a little rough around the edges.
Quite frankly, when they moved it in 1963, it was in terrible shape.
But the Christ Chapel Historical Society has worked hard to preserve the church. Renovations back in the 60s and again a couple of years ago have helped keep all of the little details in place. Everything from the wood paneling to the stained glass windows,
which are considered to be the oldest stained glass windows in the Northwest.
Now these windows, this detail,
Everything down to the scratches in the pews.
they're all elements that draw couples to the altar here on their most special day. Back in the early 1970s,
that church had the history, and so it just fit right into what we thought we'd like.
and even today.
I completely knew that it was where we needed to be married.
Each story and each wedding is unique. But over the decades, hundreds of couples
And we were ringing those bells.
have tugged these same bells in celebration.
I think Christ Chapel has a very sentimental value for thousands, if not tens of thousands of people who have a relationship with this chapel.
Together, these stories
This will always be a special place for me.
and many others compile to paint pictures of love through the ages. Love with foundations in a quaint little church in Boise, Idaho. All right, well, today it costs about $75 an hour to get married at Christ Chapel, and there's a 2-hour minimum if you want to book your wedding there. But get this, back in the 1970s, some people who I talked to who were married there tell CBS 2 that it cost just $10.